my privilege today, but have been asked to introduce our speaker, a person that we know very well in this church, the Reverend Sharon Solomon. Tomorrow we are celebrating the birthday of Paul Solomon, Sharon's husband. And she traditionally will speak this time of year, and I know that she's chosen some things to go along with Paul, I believe, on the sciences. Now, that should be interesting. But Sharon's been involved in the church since 1975. She's currently the chairperson for our pastoral council. She serves on our board of directors. She's here every Sunday, and she is here supporting this beautiful place that she loves so much. Welcome, Sharon Solomon.
Good morning. Each year, I ask Bruce to schedule me at the fellowship to honor Paul Solomon's birthday. Paul told us that his soul entry time was on July 7th, 1939 at 7 a.m. Paul would have been 86. We'll have a celebration of Paul's birthday at our Paul Solomon study group a week from Monday. And we'll continue with this study that we're going to begin today about the new science. So we invite you to join with us. Those of you who are familiar with Paul's teachings know that he talked about just about every possible topic that there is. But I considered what to speak of today, and the thing that popped into my head was the new science. Now that might seem very strange because I am not a scientist, and I really don't have the knowledge nor the patience to understand complicated scientific explanations of how life operates. But as I began to look through the new science readings, I realized that although it will take scientists to understand the specific formula and application of the principles involved, the new science mostly requires a personal transformation, a new way of looking at life, a total revamping of the way we think and how we perceive the world. This transformation is something I want for myself, and when you hear about it, I think you will agree and want it for yourself as well. The very idea is exciting to me. The Paul Solomon source talks about a science developed and operated by initiates, and more than that our world governments and all of our systems be developed and operated by initiates. The readings talk about a new order of things. But what does that mean? What is an initiate? How do we know one? How do we become one? What does the source mean by a new order of things? Maybe we can begin by talking about science itself, and to recognize that all the current technologies of the world, not only relating to energy, but to agriculture and practically everything that we do in science is related to destruction. That is, destruction not just in its effect, but in its basic philosophy. The Paul Solomon source says, all that you know of science and technology in your day is based on fear, is rooted in fear. So pervasive is this energy of fear, ruling the relationships between you, that it has pervaded all of your institutions, from your churches to your schools to your government, and has become the basis for your science and technology. Technology, then, all of your science of this day, is based upon the principle of destroying matter to release energy, with the idea in mind of supporting life. Now listen to this philosophy carefully. Your science is based upon a belief that that which lives must die in order to release living energy to support life. It doesn't even sound reasonable. It is the technology of death and destruction. The source says that our technology is destructive not just in its effects, but in its basic philosophy, in the sense of believing that in order to release energy, we have to kill something. This refers not only to the killing of plants and animals, but in combustion, we take something living and growing, like coal or fossil fuel, and destroy it. We end up releasing death from it instead of life. The source says there is another way to access energy. Instead of destroying trees, for example, or breaking down material substance to release energy, there is a way to tap energy that comes into the trees that gives them life and growth, or to gain energy as it comes into the world. When we cut down trees to release energy, you're taking energy from the wrong end. We have to learn to tap the energy in the growth spectrum instead of the destructive end. This same principle can be applied to our current sources of energy. The source seems to be talking about something more fundamental than solar energy. The source says there is a very simple formula that needs to be understood that will make all of the technologies of combustion and destruction obsolete. Paul talked to scientists about this, and they found it frustrating, asking why the source doesn't just give us the formula. But the source keeps saying that there is something fundamental that has to happen before the formula can be revealed. What would happen if an energy were revealed that can be received from the universe without cost? It would put the electric companies out of business. A lot of industry would be destroyed if suddenly a clean, efficient, free source of energy were available. Then, too, if there is an energy that is so powerful that it can replace heating and lighting systems in our homes, that can run industry, couldn't that energy also be applied for keeping people in control? Couldn't we turn that energy into weapons? This brings us back to seeing why the source says that such a science has to be in the hands of initiates. The source says that although this formula is simple, it is at the same time difficult to understand with our current mode of thinking. Here, we go beyond science to talk about the way we think. We are brought up in a culture that has been ruled by fear. This has been true throughout history. Our thoughts are concerned largely with how to protect ourselves and our interest with fear of others. People might not recognize this immediately, but think about it. We live in a threatening environment where we try to protect ourselves from everything. We try to protect ourselves from insects destroying our crops. We use fertilizers and poisons to make the earth more abundant. Fear, doubt, worry is pervasive in our thinking. We lock our homes, and our countries build military forces to protect us. We hesitate to meet other people. We have stage fright. We worry about what other people think of us. We are concerned about our health. We worry about our children, our mates, our friends. We did an exercise once in a program with Paul. We carried a ribbon around our necks attached to a notepad and pen. Our assignment was to mark down every time I think a negative thought, every time I feel worry or concern, every time I wonder if I'm doing the right thing or feel a lack of confidence, even every time I wonder if my behavior is in harmony with God's will for me. I was amazed at how many lines I had at the end of the day. That little exercise changed my life. And I wish I could say that those negative thoughts are absent now. But though they are fewer, I still find myself arguing with myself, evaluating, doubting, and questioning myself. Fear dominates our world today. There is war and crime all over. People are hurting each other. Commerce around the world consists of countries, individuals, and industries trying to protect themselves from industries of other countries. Some countries are cut out of our economic system, and we feel guilty about that, so we ship them relief supplies rather than incorporating them into a free economic system. We don't need walls, barrier, and fear. Fear dominates our academics, our science, our economy, our world governments, our relationships with crime and criminals. Instead of supporting people who have resorted to crime and loving them and healing them, we punish them and make them feel like enemies and keep the crime waves growing because we live in fear. Our entertainment industry, our music, our drama, stories, books, and writings are all pervaded by fear. We crave the excitement of conflict. If it's all harmonious, it doesn't sell. Our health industry is pervaded by fear. Health is not the promotion of life in a physical body. It's combating the enemy, disease, germs, and viruses. The source is saying that as long as we think the way we do, with two hemispheres of the brain which argue with each other, fear will pervade. And if you doubt that happens, watch yourself think for just a few minutes. You can probably do it right now. Just look at what your mind is saying right now in the thoughts that go back and forth. Are there doubts about yourself? Do you have fear, doubt, worry, any insecurity, any lack of self-confidence? If these things control your mind, then fear is in control, and a combative thinking process is ruling your mind. How do we overcome that? How do we learn to think differently? If we can overcome our fear, then we can share our resources. We can share our lives. We can communicate effectively with one another. We have a natural ability to read body language unless we ignore it. We have a natural ability to look into one another's eyes and see what another person is thinking and feeling. We have a natural ability to communicate telepathically and psychically, to see auras, a natural intuitive ability to communicate from the heart level. The readings say there was a time, perhaps in prehistory, when the thinking process was different and when the brain was one. We believe this is true as well through scientific studies of the brain and its development through the process of evolution. Even our scientists believe that there was a time when what is called the reptilian brain, that was instinctive and singular, dominated our thinking. The brain did not have two hemispheres. It was a single brain, and the process of thinking was a process of perhaps wondering something, asking questions, and allowing the self to know the answers. Thinking was with a universal mind, or contacting universal consciousness or superconsciousness. That was a process of enlightenment rather than argument between rational thought and intuition. And according to the source, we have to return to a kind of thinking that is similar to that. According to the source, the division of the brain into two hemispheres can be attributed to what is called the fall of man. The source says, quote, "We will attempt to explain that in this manner. The mind of man has developed a bicameral brain, a phenomena that occurred as a result of the fall. Before the fall, thinking had been a matter of thinking to the mind of the one, the universe, or the sun. As a result of the cataclysm, that which had been one, an open mind in one body and one polarity, came into opposition to itself. Mankind's pattern of thinking was altered. After the fall, Thought can only be achieved by the use of argument between two poles. The result of this change was the development of what was called the bicameral or hemispherical brain. This mode of thinking, then, captured within the self and structured as an argument with the self, produced patterns in opposition to what had been before, polar thinking with a bicameral brain. The thought process could only give birth to what it had become. The thinking process which produces a technology will be reflected in the technology. Thus, the result was and is a fear-based philosophy and a destructive science and technology. Your science and technology has to be a result of an argument between the sides of self, the separation of self from its source or from God. According to the source, there is a step that needs to be taken to overcome what we call bicameral thinking, the hemispheric thinking that is an argument between the two sides of the mind, the one that might be described as intuitive and the other logical, although those two words don't quite fit it exactly, they come close. There are those who believe that we must emphasize the intuitive and eliminate the logical, and they tend to be the religionists, the mystics, and perhaps the artists as well. Those who think we need to get rid of the intuitive and go only to the scientists are the scientists. They dominate the sciences. But the argument is not between these two. The argument needs to be for integration. The source says that all we ever need to know or can know is already known. There is a greater mind, a higher mind, that is the source of our ability to think, and that is not contained in the brain. We have to go beyond the brain mind to access a greater mind, to communicate with creativity itself, with the mind of God. That is the mark of the initiate, the mind that exceeds its own ability to manage facts and has ability to ask and listen and to know. The source describes the new thinking as providing a kind of arc of energy between the two hemispheres of the brain, and describes this arc like an electrical spark going from one side of the brain to the other. It's like a cap that rests on top of the head, a fourth lobe. This may be the origin of the yarmulke or the other skull caps from other religions, attempts to acquiring superconsciousness. The source says the accessing of the superconscious then, the accessing of the higher mind, which integrates the hemispheres and brings the brain to one, allows the mind to perceive in unitary language that is called the 13th path, the pillar of fire, the crown of enlightenment. Once access has been achieved, once there has been a glimpse, the memory is then a call to return and integrate totally with the one, the sun, the akasha, the great mind, the superconscious. The understanding of the laws of the forces of nature that you seek is access through the superconscious mind, through revelation rather than reason, logic or even intuition, as it is balanced with logic in your bicameral brain. The source says, intuition has given you a glimpse of that you seek, so that your heart knows that it exists. The accessing of the superconscious, which you have been seeking in practice, and particularly a commitment, is to the law of life, the law of love, the law of harmony, the law of one. These are the steps to integration of consciousness. Throughout history, there have been attempts to describe the lifting of energy into the higher or superconscious mind. One of the attempts is what people describe when they speak of praying and then meditating to ask God a question and receiving an answer. Such an idea as praying and meditating to receive answers to scientific questions strikes many so-called educated people as being superstitious, magical, too occult or religious to have any value. But it's fascinating to explore the techniques of some of the successful scientists of history. Albert Einstein, for example, claimed he went beyond the ability of his own mind to produce an altered state of consciousness, to accept answers that came from out there in the universe to him. Thomas Edison described a process of asking questions and receiving answers that were in the air. So too with the works of Nikola Tesla. These scientific breakthroughs came through steps that would not be seen as very scientific. They have come through what may be too much like prophecy or revelatory thinking. It has been ever so in history. The source says, study that one who came closest to revealing them, as you are somewhat aware, is that one who worked with electricity, Tesla, and whose works remain even now, with its patent and his writings, little understood, but indicators of a manner of rediscovering the ability to provide electricity over areas in quanta rather than through wires as signals. Understand the reason for the moving of that opportunity from Tesla to Edison was a commercial consideration. And in that sense, Edison's technique made possible the providing of energy in controlled amounts, which could be licensed and charged for, while Tesla's system made electricity freely available for the taking of one who had a receiver. Then, for the purpose of greed, was a source of energy destroyed or set aside or rejected that men might better control or manipulate in advantage. We are now at a point now that we have problems on the planet in all areas that we can think of, from government to economy to agriculture to medicine to science and technology. In every endeavor around the world, we have problems that are too great for our current leaders and thinkers to overcome. What in the world are we going to do? We are destroying our planet, and no one has answers. There is not a single country in this world that is making their country work well for the benefit of the people. The more we look at it, the more we see highly controversial problems and challenges. The possibility of a world that has acquired a science that is not destructive, that allows us to tap energy in a natural way, that allows the earth to be abundant without destructive technology, without feeling we have to fight nature, seems like a Don Quixote-esque impossible dream. The source talks of a principle of nature that says, if there were not everything on this planet that is necessary for man's existence on this planet naturally occurring and present in abundance, man as a life form would not have appeared on this planet. Simply stated, everything that we need on this planet is here in this environment. If we could live by this principle, we would live in harmony with nature. The readings say of the new science that a scientist who does not know God is a danger to mankind. This might extend to include a gardener, a teacher, an engineer, a philosopher, a psychologist. Those who do not know God are dangerous. But then when we try to define what God is, we get all sorts of descriptions. Paul believed that the best description for God is living love or life that supports life. One of the ways to know God is to know what God is not. God is not fear, worry, self-destruction, loss of confidence, distrust of others, distrust of nature. If I want to get to know God, I need to get to know love. Paul said, this is the first step. If I can communicate with life, confidence, love, that which makes me feel good about life, I can come to know God. The source says, for the formula depends upon the understanding of the very basic fact that the power of love is greater than the power of fear. A man who would, with the totality of his being, understand and believe and know and trust the power of love overcomes the power of fear. Such a man is he who must discover and give and keep the formula until such time as he is able to persuade the consciousness of mankind to understand the power of love. Do understand that the one among you who can access the living unifying force, the one force that is love, and can channel that force for the self, so that there is the unification of the parts of the body, the hemispheres of the brain, the energies within the self, that one can establish or give or channel or describe what has been dreamed of as the unified theory. For the unified approach or understanding of energy and force is the channeling of the law of one. It is the secret formula of the new science. And if you would channel that formula, it is not so much required that you understand laws and terminology and physics, but it is required that you understand the law of one. And for each who has come as close as one can reach that perfect understanding of love without fear, he would initiate you into the kingdom, creating of you a beginning of an army of those who will go about the world introducing such a principle as will revolutionize thought, actions, interactions, and relationships on this earth until it be renewed. Thank you.